just trust me on this.
Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Monday night's edition of the Q-Files. It's the 19th of April. Obviously, the year is 2004, and we've got a lot of stuff to cover tonight. Now, I want to start with the ABC News article, and like I say, a lot of stuff to cover tonight. But they're claiming, again, understand this is ABC, and I know a lot of you won't believe anything unless it's on the big news. And have you ever noticed that ABC, CBS, and NBC have that same C in it? And I think that someday I'll do a show on what I think the C stands for, but just ponder that. And then you think of CNN and MSNBC, you know, and, you know, I know that everybody thinks that it's communications, but I think there's a bigger, obvious statement to what these guys are all about, and I think the word, I'll just tell you what it is, control. But listen to this. U.S. intelligence officials have uncovered evidence of a potential terrorist attack, according to ABC News. Like many such tips, it's vague, but the government is disturbed enough that it held a real and rare conference call with local police to warn them. The intelligence received a week ago, but secret until now, not secret to us or to those of you that subscribe to the HQ Intel Alert, because we tell you this stuff, is from known Muslim extremists who suggest an attack, possibly in the U.S., was imminent, and that operatives were already in place, according to sources. I think it's very clear from what we're seeing right now is that the bad guys, the Al-Qaeda, is getting very creative, that they are active, and they are going to continue to try and hit us, said Jerry Hauer, a former emergency management official and now a news consultant. Now, keep in mind, everyone, that this is very, very much the discussion over the last week or so on all of the boards, but also today in London, over 10 people with ties to radical Islam were arrested, and that the whole world seems to be expecting something, whether you're going with the 19th or whatever. Forget the date. Look for the event, because the event will kick it off and determine it. Now, I got to tell you, I'm blown away by where people listen to my radio program, and it's just amazing. I want to read something to you from Heidi in Austria. And Heidi, God bless you. Here's what she said. Hi, Steve. I'm listening to the MP3 you post on your site, and I can relate to the story with the Muslim churches versus church bells. I live in Austria, and I was recently talking with a German lady. She lives in a town near Munich, and they are having the same problem. The Muslims are already broadcasting their prayers via loudspeakers, and the rest of the town hates it. They have been trying to shut it down, but they can't because of the same argument. If the city shuts down the loudspeakers, the Muslims say the city also has to stop ringing the bells on the cathedrals. So you see, it's already a problem over here, and it will happen, I'm sure, in the U.S. too. She said, I wish I could listen to your show more often. It's really interesting. Keep up the good work. Well, thank you, Heidi. But I think that most of the world is forgetting something that's basic to this whole understanding of terrorism. First of all, everyone, it is absolutely imperative that you understand that this is a worldwide problem. It's not just the United States. It's not just, quote-unquote, the Friends of Israel. It is absolutely promulgated to, how should I say this, make amends and right the wrongs that the fundamentalist Islamic jihadites have suffered in their eyes at the hands of the West. Now, I don't know who this gentleman is, but I want to read you a posting off of Time Bomb 2000. I'd like to meet this guy. His name is Wild T as in Tom, too. Don't know who he is. And here's what he said. And you know, somebody that isn't politically correct, God bless him. Listen to this. He says, now to the point. Make no mistake about this war on terrorism. This is a war for the very existence of the Western civilization. Radical Islam is a cancer that must be destroyed at all costs. Notice what he's saying, radical Islam. These fanatics cannot be bargained with, and they will not compromise. They only want to kill us and will use any means possible to do so. All this talk about being lied to about Iraq, we're just in it for the oil, etc., is a bunch of crap. There's plenty of evidence out there for those that wish to see that Iraq was very involved with terrorism. Invading Iraq was a brilliant move, as it will make a strategic base for future operations against others in that region that need to be taken out also. This is all-out war, folks. If we as a people, and I mean all over the Western world, don't wake up and fight this fight with all we have, with all means possible, we will lose this war. Are you ready to convert to the religion of peace, become a slave, or be killed because of your faith? They started this war, and I pray to God that we finish it. We have fought people like this before. Remember the Japanese in World War II? They were just as fanatic and suicidal. They were also well-trained. Unlike the majority of the enemy we face today, how did we defeat them? We annihilated their country and broke their will to fight. We must do no less today. And no, I'm not sorry if I've offended anyone. Political correctness will destroy this country. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the reason why I wanted to read that is because I said that the only epitaph that I could figure out for America, not only, I think I would add something, they abandoned God and political correctness killed them. You see, again, you cannot fight a battle when you don't understand the battlefield or the war. Now, again, I want to take you to kind of a fascinating statement. It is my contention that the nations of the Middle East have been built up to ultimately take advantage of the fact that there is a group of world leaders that know that Satan is coming on the scene, and when I say that, full-fledged to be exalted in the temple, declaring himself to be God, but that this whole World War III has already been set up. Now, I'm reading from the front page of my website, and I want to talk about the World War III and the New World Order. Now, again, I want to thank Cassie for sending me this. I'm quoting, the Third World War must be fomented by taking advantage of the difference caused by the agentur of the Illuminati between the political Zionists and the leaders of the Islamic world. The war must be conducted in such a way that Islam, the Muslim Arabic world, and political Zionism, the State of Israel, mutually destroy each other. Meanwhile, the other nations, once more divided on this issue, will be constrained to fight to the point of complete physical, moral, spiritual, and economic exhaustion. We will then unleash the nihilists and the atheists, and we shall provoke a formidable social cataclysm, which in all its horror will show clearly to the nations the effect of absolute atheism, the origin of savagery, and the most bloody turmoil. Then everywhere the citizens, obliged to defend themselves against the world minority of revolutionaries, will exterminate those destroyers of civilization, and the multitude disillusioned with Christianity, whose deistic spirits will from that moment be without compass or direction, anxious for an ideal, but without knowing where to render its adoration, will receive the true light through the universal manifestation of the pure doctrine of Lucifer, brought finally out into the public view. This manifestation will result from the general reactionary movement, which will follow the destruction of Christianity and atheism, both conquered and exterminated at the same time. And basically, that is the statement of Albert Pike. Now, ladies and gentlemen, again, it's really important that you kind of get your mind around this thought tonight, because this is, I think, the critical understanding. If you understand the nature of your enemy, you'll understand when I start talking about soft targets, churches, malls, etc., why it's such a, how should I say this, obvious, yet it still seems to escape most people's ability to reference just how determined the world of Islam is to wipe out the people of the book. Now, for those of you that hate the Jews, and for those of you that hate the Arabs, and those of you that hate Christians, and everybody who hates everybody, I got to share this with you. Again, the whole and ultimate purpose, the, if you will, final confrontation, is to stir up the masses into such a complete, chaotic, and destructive movement that everybody makes war against everybody. We've been talking for the 10 years or 11 years I've been on talk radio now about what it was going to be. What will the event be that sets about a civil war in this country? It now becomes apparent to me that, as I've stated before in all the snide remarks I've gotten over pretty much a half a decade, that people can't understand why we haven't had more terrorist attacks. My answer to that is we've had plenty. It's just that they have been dismissed or tried to be equalized. Now, I thought about this over the weekend. I've been thinking about this as I ponder the times we live in. Understand, if I tell you something's going to happen and I can't stop it, then the light of scrutiny comes back on me saying, well, you knew about it, why didn't you stop it? Whereas if something happens, and number one, I deny I knew anything about it, and number two, I didn't do anything about it, then I have basically what all presidents operate under, and that's the fact that they claim that what they don't know can't hurt them. That's called plausible deniability. So it's now obvious to me, it's kind of like all the lights have gone off at once, that the reason why anything that happens in the United States is automatically denied first and foremost in, let's say, 90% or maybe 95% of the cases, is because with all of the turmoil and the upheaval and the tumult that's in the CIA, FBI, DIA, all the different intelligence agencies, it's easier to, how do I say it, ignore it than deal with it. Because again, I make this statement, I do not believe that at this point America has the will to do what's necessary, i.e., if you've got us being killed and our men and women being killed by people coming in from Iran and Syria, you've got to deal with Iran and Syria. I've been told, ladies and gentlemen, I think it's out there now in some websites, that basically the Israelis have given Damascus another warning, and I think this is the last one. If there is any form of rocket attack that's coming out of Nasrallah, Hezbollah, in southern Lebanon against Israel, Damascus is toast. Now, those of you familiar with the prophecies in Isaiah should realize that's putting us in a very immediate time frame. The other thing I think that you need to understand, look, they had Bob Bevilacqua. He's one of my favorite Fox analysts, ex-Green Beret, because I'll tell you what, in my opinion, of all these talking heads, maybe Paul Valley, the ex-general, might be up there too, but Bevilacqua is the only guy telling it like it really is. He basically said today, I don't know if any of you have been watching Fox, but he basically said today when he was being interviewed, and I don't know the guy interviewing him this morning at about 8 o'clock my time, but he said, if we do not have the will to do what's going to be necessary to do, we're going to lose this thing. Now, my thoughts, obviously, Sadr has made the statement in Fallujah, Najaf, that don't shoot at the Spanish. Do you think it's coincidental, anyone, that immediately Spain is pulling out their troops, their 1,300 troops, and it's to be done absolutely as quickly as possible? And then it's also fascinating to me that today there were, 14 rockets launched against some of the settlements. And concurrent with that, Greater Manchester Police have arrested, 10 suspects, I stated, and these guys were plotting to strike high-profile location targets with large numbers of people. Sports and shopping centers, sports events and shopping centers were pretty much detailed as being what's the what you say, the most opportune and most soft or the easiest targets to hit. Now again, my answer or my question to you is tonight, forgive me, I've got the answer, but I want you to hear your answers. Do you believe that we have the will to do what's necessary? And then while I'm talking about this, there's been a lot of talk about the Kitty Hawk. I want you to know currently the Kitty Hawk is in Australia. And what's important to understand about the Kitty Hawk is that the Kitty Hawk now is again showing up in massive amounts of postings. Now, to take out a U.S. aircraft carrier, most people don't realize that in order to take out a carrier, first of all, you've got to defeat its detection capabilities. One of the analysts at NEIN, and I call her L1, her first name's Lisa, what Lisa has turned up has been most curious. We couldn't figure out why there was so much stuff being talked about Pirates Cove. And, you know, you've heard of Al-Qaeda's secret navy, especially from Mansour Ijaz. And Mansour Ijaz travels in the circle, everyone, where he does pick up some very telling and compelling information. Now, a lot of people, you know, and I should say this, people that should have something between their ears, above their nose, and below the top of their scalp, meaning brains, they just can't get it through their head that you do take out a U.S. aircraft carrier, it's going to be the biggest news in the world. If there's any single military, let's say this, not vehicle, but ship, that exemplifies the American capability of force projection, it's an aircraft carrier. Now, I want to read the article to you about where the Kitty Hawk is. This is dated today, April 19, 2004. Perth, Australia. 2 U.S. sailors, one suffering pneumonia and one with a broken arm, were evacuated from their warships stationed off Australia's far northwest coast, officials said Sunday. The pair were airlifted from the aircraft carrier USS Kitty Hawk near Exmouth, 1,200 kilometers or 750 miles north of the city of Perth on Saturday. A Navy plane flew the sailors to an Australian air base in Perth. They were then taken by ambulance to the Royal Perth Hospital, where the man suffering from pneumonia was placed in intensive care. He was in serious but stable condition. He is improving. The outlook at this time is good, a spokesman said, on condition of anonymity. However, he could still be in the intensive care unit for the next week or two, but at this time that's the prognosis. The other sailor was in an orthopedic ward receiving medical attention for his broken arm, the hospital said. It was not known how long he will remain in the hospital. The hospital spokesman said it was not known when the man contracted pneumonia and how his fellow crewmate broke his arm. Okay, somebody says, well, why is that important? Very simply. Do you think if the Associated Press knows where the Kitty Hawk is, we know, or they know also? Now, let me tell you something about piracy. There are more pirates in Micronesia. There are more pirates in the areas of some of the Philippine waters, and you're talking about places that are absolutely able to shelter and hide a lot of ships. Now, it's also very important for you to understand that Indonesia, to the north of Australia, and Malaysia, even farther north, are pretty much in the jihadi camp. So the fact of pre-positioning cruise missiles, or even worse, some of the Sunburn missiles, the Soviet cruise missile that's an anti-ship missile, is very much a possibility. Now again, one of the Northeast Intelligence Network analysts have turned up so much on Pirates Cove that until the Kitty Hawk was located, it became kind of not a moot point, but a point of curiosity. So how are they going to attack this thing in the Western Hemisphere? They're not, ladies and gentlemen. They're going to attack it in the Eastern Hemisphere. So it provides a telling and I think a compelling case that we are seeing some extremely volatile and vehement talk. Now, let me share this with you, too. About, let's see, an hour ago, I was on a conference call with Laura Mansfield and Lisa, and we were talking about, for a half an hour, just some of the nuances and the unusual events that are taking place right now. First of all, there is a call to prayer on a lot of the Arab boards for the operation tonight. Now, that could be real and it could be false. And they're not talking about for our brothers in jihad in Australia or anything. But Australia has been named so many times as the next potential target, even by Al-Qaeda sources themselves. It was kind of a toss-up whether it was going to be Italy or Australia. Based on right now what we're seeing, it could be both simultaneously, or it could be very much Australia. Now, the Opera House, the Sydney Opera House, was also mentioned by name. So when we start to put all this stuff together, it starts to point a picture and paint a picture. Now, for those of you that are watching this stuff, it is not only telling, again, as I said, but it's also very much compelling. And it's compelling that we are getting exactly, how do I say this, what we have sown, we're going to reap. Now look, here's the deal. When a nation turns against God, go to the Old Testament, read it just from a historic standpoint. When a nation sins so grievously and so wickedly against God, historically, look, I've said this before, but I think it's probably one of the most pronounced things and most determined statements I can make. God judges nations in history. He judges individuals in eternity, ultimately. But he also can judge individuals. I mean, he's God. He does what he does. But the point that I'm trying to make is that what I see is when a nation goes against God and becomes so proud and arrogant and basically flees from the one who gives victory, then defeat is assured. If you want to see that in a first-hand Old Testament passage, go read the book of Deuteronomy, especially the 28th chapter. I think it's the first 15 verses are blessing, but then the curse verses are double what the blessing verses are if we turn away. Now look, here's the deal. If you're the creator of something, even put it into context of something that men can relate to, if men who build rockets, when the rockets get out of control, and the damage that would be done would be too great to just let it go out of control on its own, what do? They blow it up. And in many places, even to the place of requiring Moses to intercede with God, when God said to Moses, stand aside, Moses, I'm going to wipe out all of the children of Israel and I'll make of you a new nation, Moses immediately went to intercession and pleaded with God, and based on who Moses was, he had a position with God to plead in intercessory prayer. Probably one of the greatest intercessory prayers prior to the prayers that Jesus prayed, which were the greatest because of who Jesus is versus Moses. But the point that I'm trying to make is this, is that history, and it doesn't matter what great, quote, proud, arrogant nations we're dealing with, they have certain key points in their either short-lived or long-lived statement of being. In other words, how long they've been around. That basically you can see the time when they turn and they burn. And you know, somebody once said it's real easy, turn or burn. Well, I guess what I'm saying tonight, and it's really difficult for me to be as clear as I'd like, is that again we are picking up too many coincidences, call them that. Somebody said, well, aren't all these things, there are people that believe that anything's on a message board is suspect. I can tell you this, there are suspect messages on boards, but quite candidly, even Al-Qaeda's operations manual and the issues of Al-Batar, the battle manuals that are being brought out every couple of weeks and posted on the internet, those things are absolutely teaching everyone in the world on the internet how to go out and be good warriors for Allah. In other words, how to go out and just basically wreak havoc and deal with asymmetrical warfare or guerrilla warfare. Now again, ladies and gentlemen, if we don't get it together, and I think President Bush is not only between a rock and a hard place, I'd say he's in the press right now. And I mean P-R-E-S-S, I don't mean the newspapers. Because with Spain bailing, Portugal threatening to bail, Britain's got so much pressure on it now that I don't believe Tony Blair can make another stand at it. For instance, if a major attack happens in London, it seems like the battle plan for Al-Qaeda right now is very specific to try and unseat Blair, even though he's not up for re-election when Bush is, but to bring as much political pressure on the president and on the prime minister as possible. So, when I hear Condoleezza Rice talking about the expectation of terror attacks before the election, well, pretty much she was either forced to let that out on purpose, or she basically, I don't believe she lets anything slip. So there was a point in preparing you and I and everyone who lives in this country for events prior to the next election. So again, it's very much up in the air when it happens, but the fact is that it's going to happen is going to be very obvious. Let's see. Here's what Shirley says, and I want to read this. She said, Steve, when I believe I am right, nothing defeats my will to do the right thing on behalf of myself, my family, or my country. As regards to Iraq, I am yet to be convinced we are over there sacrificing our boys for the right reason. And by the way, I don't believe in sacrificing our boys at all. I want to share this. I understand, quote, the military doctrine that you can't win everything by air power, but I've been on the talk radio. For those of you that are new to this thing, I have said for the last 3 years prior to invading Iraq, Iraq was not the problem. Iran was. And so I said it over and over and over. And now we're having to deal with the tail of the snake and not the head of the snake. So I just want to go on record. Those of you who listen to me know that has been my position, and I just want to say it. I read the other guy's email because off of Time Bomb, or his posting, because he was making a statement. Political correctness will not win what we're fighting over.